Hey guys, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm very happy today. Thank you so much, guys, for coming up. And this is one more video from OpenSense. I'm really happy today to bring our friend Bogo, the author of The Art of Auditing, one of the most amazing pieces in auditing research. And it's so hard to come by something that's actually compelling. In Twitter, what we are doing constantly is look at the numbers. I made X today, I made Y today. That just makes everyone, incredibly anxious, and we don't see often enough pieces of research that can actually lead you to those numbers. So, welcome, Bogo. Really happy to have you on OpenSense today, brother.
Hey again, everyone. Great pleasure to be here. And I'm gonna do my best to bring value with this talk. Uh, I prepared a really simple presentation, and I had to come up with some proper name. So I thought, since the art of auditing is in Asian philosophical style, so this one is also in that sense. So I named this the way of the auditor. What the agenda of what I'm gonna talk about today is, first I'm gonna share a bit of context on my background, and I'm mainly gonna do this not to talk about myself, but to give you a proper way to understand when I talk about my achievements and what I did, like in my journey as an auditor, so you can compare and understand better how I managed to like get to where I am currently. After that, I'm gonna talk about the more common and critical mistakes that a lot of people do when they try to get into auditing and into competitions, and what are the critical, moments that make them quit. That's the most important part when you're starting out, not to quit. So that's, and I'm gonna show you practical examples from what I was doing when I was starting out, and what I would do if I had to start now. After that, I'm gonna touch upon another topic that I think is very important. It's about how to, once you're past that beginner stage, you should continue to upskill and get better in auditing. And one of the best ways to do that, at least from my experience, is to build the skill to analyze reports from competitions and from audits as a whole, to audit it properly, extract the knowledge, and add it to your auditor mindset. It's like it's the way you get better. And then also, I'm gonna show a real example how this saved me in one of the more recent audits, private audits I have done, and why it's important to do that. And finally, I'm gonna touch a bit on the art of auditing. I'm guessing one of you already know about that. But so I'm gonna share some probably interesting details and challenges that were behind, compiling this resource, because it was a lot of work by a lot of the most really prominent auditors in this industry. Oh, about my background, one important thing to point out, which I think is might be interesting, is that I don't have a hardcore technical background. Like 5 years before, prior to start to getting to do audits, I actually studied to become a lawyer.
Wow.
Uh,
Wait 1 second, brother. So, you were actually trying to become a lawyer?
yep, yep.
Bro, you must be the
That
best at escalations, man. Just give me the wave, man, because those are hard as hell.
yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the best at it, but definitely the skill to, uh write down your arguments and defend them is something that you get to build as when you're trying to study for a lawyer. So definitely helped. But I can also confirm that there are people that are much better than me when they have to argue in competitions.
That's some
So maybe I wasn't,
that's some alpha writing there. Guys, everyone, start
but this
feeling
doesn't
the
mean you have.
That's a,
That doesn't mean you get study to become a lawyer
I
to be good at.
understand. I understand.
Yeah, yeah. But when I was probably somewhere in the middle of my at university, at in the middle of my studying, I decided I don't like it. I want to find something else. And this is when I initially was introduced to programming. I started coding some simple stuff. I learned to code in Python. And then I started building some simple applications. Eventually, I became like a freelancer. I built small projects for different teams, for different like small clients. And when I felt like I'm confident enough in my technical skills, I decided I want to join a tech company. And a friend of mine just told me about that Bulgaria. I'm from Bulgaria, by the way. A friend of mine told me about a company that was he had a really good feedback on, and it turned out that it was a blockchain company. It was the second largest blockchain company and still is in Bulgaria. So this is how I ended up in the Web3 ecosystem. It was completely unplanned and completely like accidental.
Wow.
But I can say that was the probably one of the best things that happened in my life because it pointed me to a direction that I probably never would have picked if I
Yes.
did not stumble upon it.
No, bro, I shared same feeling. I mean, regarding that's a unique opportunity. Like everyone that's here is very lucky, no matter if we're not making money right now, etc. But being Web3 and being Web3 security is a gift. Yeah, it's hard work, but it pays off. A lot of hard work doesn't really pay off, so you need to think on that. Bro, one question before we start the presentation. You said that you started by studying, learning how to code, then applying for a company. Did you ever embrace the investing side of it, like buying shitcoins, buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum? Are you doing that or not?
Uh, I wouldn't say I fully immersed into the investing side of Web3. I bought some Ethereum in 2017 just for the sake of doing it because, everybody was doing it at the time and the fear of missing out was really strong back then. I think I lost, like most other people. It was not a big amount of money, but, it was my first, like, um, interaction with the ecosystem as a whole,
I
but
understand.
I did not like it because I lost money. But other than that, I have not like traded NFTs and stuff like that. Until I joined the blockchain company, I barely knew what a wallet was, and what are NFTs, what are ERC 20 tokens, and all of that. And when I joined the blockchain company, my main focus was backend development. I This is where I learned, how to interact with the chain, how wallets work, what are signatures and all that things. Yes, all of that. But again, my main focus was the off-chain side of things, building nodes that communicate to the network, listening to events, indexing them in the database, and so on and so forth. And I wrote very plain smart contracts like some tokens or some NFT contracts because the project we were building the Web3 version of Udemy. I don't know if you know it. It's the educational platform. The same concept, but everything happens with crypto, and you get minted like NFT tickets that allow you to buy courses and then watch them, and you get minted, certificates as NFTs and so on and so forth. So eventually, at the second year of that in that company, I also became the team lead of my team.
Those are fast, man.
Uh,
That's very fast. I mean, to become the lead, like what, 2 years or so?
well, I was grinding hard, or like always, and probably I don't know the management, my tech lead he saw that I'm pushing really hard, and I was doing it because I really wanted to know, to be capable of doing stuff. And they just said, "Man, you're ready. You're doing most of the things other people are, struggling with." And the main reason is that 2 years prior to getting in that company, I was programming like hell, like 6, 7 hours a day. I was learning all type of concepts, and this is why I'm sharing all of this. I have all of that has allowed me to build the skills to grasp concepts really, really quickly, and learn stuff. So by the time I had to learn about web security, I already knew all the things I should do to learn those stuff fast and efficiently, and what were, the gotchas. So yeah, and now comes the interesting question: how I ended up in the security, industry. Because up until that, I was just programming, and again, every
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Sorry, but I want to make a
yes,
question
yes, yes.
before we start into that because I've been a developer forever, so I know layers of development. I know when you start just learning code, then you start looking at code and saying that okay, code should be beautiful, should be well organized. By the way, you're yeah, okay, should be beautiful. And then when you start to say, hey, actually, code should ship and be able to deliver, because sometimes you have code that's too beautiful and doesn't deliver. So there's like a sweet spot in the middle. And I want to talk about specifically Solidity right now. So, do you think that to become a developer today, do I need to dive into the most important EIPs, or can I just go with the flow? Because Solidity is not very complicated, but can introduce a lot of errors. Everyone knows that. Like if you, but at the same time, we see the position that sometimes auditing firms they take a stab against the devs. They say, "Hey, this dev is so bad that this code is actually very auditable. The code is kind of sick." So to become a Solidity developer, do I really need to be the most smart guy, like study everything, or can I just like put like 2 3 weeks hard on that and just go with the flow? What do you think would be the best? Like, should you be like the best dev, or can you just start learning and start hustling and start?
Well, I think when it comes to, writing good code, everything boils down to the proper, building the proper habits. Uh, I already had done that with the, standard Web2 programming. But if you did not have any prior experience and you're just jumping into building smart contracts, I think it's really important to keep those same, to follow those same principles as you would with standard programming. Learning how things work, then learning what the best practices are, around building those contracts. It would be a nice addition to also read about security. I think this is something that the more modern, protocol developers are doing, because I think a lot of the developers of protocols are more aware of common security bugs now than they were like 1 or 2 or 3 years ago. And that's something you can, observe from competitions, from private engagements ahead. Like, things are getting better gradually, like, and not immediately, but they're getting uh, better for sure. So I think that, all our efforts in that direction are bearing fruit. And like very simple books that used to pay very well in competitions are very hard to get by nowadays, because, as I said, developers are more educated now. For example, when I was doing some smart contracts in the blockchain company, I had very little notion about the security aspects. I only knew that once we do the contracts, we have to hand them over to some guys that, you know, check them for security holes. and that was the extent of my knowledge. But I didn't know about re-entrancy and stuff like that. I was very, very uneducated.
Awesome.
I have to admit. And yeah, this as I said, the getting into Web3 security was another coincidence. Just a colleague of mine told me about those people, participating in something called competitions, and they were making crazy money. Which was actually a lot less than the numbers we see now, but at the time it still seemed like a fantasy to me. And I thought it's a scam, and but then he showed me the results. He showed me the Cold Arena website, and the leaderboard, and everything started to look legit. And then I thought about it. It sounded like an interesting thing to try, and this is how I hopped on the train. And I'm gonna tell a bit about how my journey went. Like, I'm gonna recap it really quickly, and then I'm gonna focus on the most important parts of it. It's how the beginning, the initial stage, and the errors I saw others that are doing, and how I like evaded those errors, and then throughout my journey how I upskilled and what gave me the most value. So if I have to recap, once I went into auditing in October 2023. What I did initially was I just jumped on a competition called Arena. Prior to the competition, like 1 week before that, I just read the Ethereum book, and that was it. I had no knowledge about bugs and stuff like that. I just wanted to try it out. I spent about, it wasn't a very complex protocol. It was about lending and borrowing. So I spent 1 week on it. And at the end of the competition, I was very frustrated. I barely managed to read all of the codes, and I had no time to think about bugs. And even though I had a lot of experience of reading code and stuff like that, but the whole experience was very frightening. And at the end, I only found only one book. So uh, I really knew that if I was to do immediately another competition, I was gonna quit, because it I couldn't find my way in the protocol. Didn't know what I was doing, so I was at a crossroad. Either I would have to step back and prepare myself properly, which I'm gonna talk about in detail, and then go back to competitions, or I just succumb to the FOMO, because at the time the rate of competitions has started to increase, and people were more frequently posting about their winnings. And it's really hard to discipline yourself and isolate from all of that and just prepare and not to compete. And I decided to stick with discipline and not compete, because if I continued with my current rate of preparation, I would just have quit like everyone else, because I wouldn't find anything. So it and I spent 2 months preparing, and then in December 2023, I started competing really hard. I decided I'm gonna do this for 6 months straight without stopping, every single day, and see what happens. At minimum, 4 to 5 hours a day, at minimum. And I combined this with my full-time position as a team lead, at the company. So basically, I was working like 12 hours a day, and I had to implement a very rigorous time management. Like, in the mornings, I was auditing, because this when my brain was the freshest. And then in the rest of the day, I was at work, and I would take a few hours break, and then I would audit again for a few hours, and then I would go to bed. So, uh, in my first 2 months, I managed to participate in about 8 competitions, and my first one ever, I made like 300 bucks, I think. And on each next one, I think I made somewhere between $400 or $600. And it was pretty motivating, because things were starting to get better. And then at month number 3, uh, something miraculous happened and I won my first competition. It was probably the best day of my life because I mean, it, you can describe it. It was the first time I have won something that significant. I made like 6K, and I couldn't believe that it's possible to, invest that amount of effort and finally to get a result you've been working so hard. And after that competition, there was another one that was, the best performers from that competition were invited to the new one, and I managed to win that one as well, and in a row from the first one, and it was my first five-figure, reward. And so from I got like from zero to hero, if I can use that phrase, in like 3 months, which was insane. I never would have imagined that is possible. And then on top of that, 1 month later, I participated in what at the time was the biggest uh, competition. It was Blast. It was a L2 chain that was a fork of Optimism. So I participated in that, and I also scored my biggest reward ever. It was 40 something K. But what I want to say here is that thanks to all the preparation I've put up, in advance, I managed to progress significantly faster than I would have if I just started competing and competing without proper preparation. If I have to summarize this, going slow in the beginning is the fastest way to um,
That's very interesting.
achieve results fast. So after I got my rewards from Blast, the results, this is when I said to myself, okay, this is the absolute, proof I got this, and I'm gonna go full in. So I gave my, resignation letter to my employers. I left the blockchain company and I went all in. I decided it's time to try private audits. Because I wanted to see how they differ from the competitive model. Of course, the financials were more steady and more stable there, and I wanted to audit in a team with other great people, and that's why I joined Paladin, where they are working with some of the really big protocols in this space. So I get to audit like a lot of great protocols. Um, 2 months into Paladin, I was also had the privilege to start being assigned as lead auditor. The difference between just being a regular and lead auditor is that in the second case you're responsible for the whole audit. You communicate with the client. You build the report. You synchronize between different team members and make sure all of the issues in the report are valid and are properly have a proper recommendation to be fixed. And yeah, this teaches you a lot about how to be responsible and how to handle clients. And a few months later, I also started doing private audits with clients directly,
Nice.
which teaches you even more about responsibility, because it's all you there. You're the one who has to close the client, the offer. You're the one who has to compile the report, and you're responsible for making sure that code base is secure, and you're giving the proper recommendations for follow-up steps, like if they need other audits or if they need to do an audit with another other auditors like that have a fresh set of eyes, assessing the situation according to the client. So teaches you a lot, and this
Okay.
is what I've been doing.
Sorry. But
Yes,
Ramirez has one question, and he's asking, how did you not get discouraged in the beginning? So how did you keep going even though it's very hard to
okay,
study?
that is a very relevant question, and the next thing I'm going to talk about is exactly
Awesome.
touching upon this.
Awesome.
It's I'm gonna talk about why most of the newcomers why they quit and why they lose motivation. and it's I'm gonna share how or what I did to uh make sure I don't quit.
Awesome.
Uh,
One second. Before you start, he's also asking when you started auditing, what you were actually doing. How did you know you were productive with your time?
uh, can you ask again? I'm sorry. I just
Yes.
not here.
So when you started, how did you actually knowing what you're doing were actually effective? How did you know that you were actually productive with your time?
Well, actually, initially when I was doing my first ever competition and nothing happened, I just knew that was not efficient and I have to do something else because this is not gonna work. And I just did what was already working for me. I just applied the same principles from Web 2 programming, and that was study well with the things you want to like learn and then practice them. And it gives you confidence that you can do them, and after that you just continue to exercise and exercise and exercise and just practice. So how did I knew? um Probably that was part to my experience, but I knew that I had three problems when I did my that audit I told you about. I ended up very frustrated. The first one was that I had absolutely no idea what an issue is. I mean, how it looks like. And the second one was that I did not know how to find those things. And I had no confidence. And this was one of the main factors that was making me want to quit. I mean, the moment I opened the code base, I felt like I want to quit. And this is something I had to like overcome. And that's the biggest problem with people that come and don't have proper experience. I mean, probably if you used to be a hacker or Web 2 auditor, prior to this, you probably already have the skills, but that was not my case. So a lot of the guys just hop into competitions and they succumb to the all the posts on Twitter, people telling how much money they made and how successful they are without any prior context, and they just jump in and expect everything to happen immediately. They see how hard it is, and they um they lose
Uh,
motivation very very quickly, and they quit. So the most important thing is not to quit. So what I did to solve these two problems I had, the first one that I didn't know what books are, and the second one was I don't know how to find them. So what I did was I devoted 2 months just to prepare myself before getting into audits. The first 2 weeks of those 2 months, I dedicated to learning about the basic bugs, in smart contracts like reentrancy attacks and um, inflation attacks and only reentrancies and all of that, just to know what are they're like hooks I can, hold on to, and that would point me in the protocols that I'm auditing. And after that, so once I knew what the bugs are, I needed to prove to myself that I can find those bugs. This would give me confidence, and once I have that confidence, I would this would protect me from quitting. And once you get that, you're past the beginner stage because from then on you only need to have patience and keep on auditing and auditing and auditing, and you will be build the expertise in no time. So the most effective way I solved the second part, like teaching myself how to find bugs, was through shadow audits. If I have to explain briefly what that is, it's just picking a contest that already happened in the past that has the report published, and you just replay that contest as if it was a real life contest. And then immediately after that, you read the report and consume everything from it. And trust me, in the matter, I spent like a month and a half, and I did two shadow audits. Yes, I did
oh,
two shadow audits. But believe me, I went all in as if I'm gonna get money from that, and I like at least tripled my auditing skills and capacity. And as I told you, I mean, this is why I started with the achievements. So once I get to tell you about all those stuff, you get to see what they allowed me to do and why I did them. Oh, I wanted to, be a bit practical. I'm gonna show you an example of how I picked, contest to shadow audit. First, I'm showing you the one I did when I was starting out. As you can see, that was way back in time. It was 2023, almost, yeah, more than 2 years ago. But what's important in the beginning stage is, the principles and building the proper habits, because this is what's gonna keep you afloat. It's gonna be the stable foundation that would help you to advance after that. So, I picked this, protocol for two reasons. I just went to Code Arena, but you can go to Sherlock or any other like Code Hulks as well, and go through their past contests. So, when I was starting out, I picked this one. There are two reasons. It's very simple. And as I pointed out here, it's very important to keep things simple, because when you're starting out, your brain capacity, your capacity to audit is very small. So you should avoid all occasions of frustration. Keep it simple and give it more time. And with time, the effects will compound and you'll get better and better and better. So this one is very small, like 460 lines of code. It's absolutely meant to be for beginners. And the second reason is, if you go to the report, maybe 1 second, you can see that there's plenty of bugs. So you have 8 high vulnerabilities over here, and you have 12 medium. And for a code base of almost 500 lines of code, that's a lot, which means you have a lot of ground to exercise and see what you manage to find. And it's not complex, you won't get overwhelmed. So what you do is basically, let me get back. So you download the repo, download it to your computer, open it with VS Code, you audit it. I'm actually keeping a copy of the original shadow audit I was doing. I'm gonna open it for you so you can have, a relatively good idea of how it looks. So this is what I did like 2 years ago. So you open it, you see how long it took for the competitions. Let's say 6 days, but since you're a beginner, you can spend 10 days, 12 days, as much as you need to, grasp the code and understand everything. So don't put too much pressure on you. You're exercising here, and you open the code base and you read the code, and when you find stuff, you write down the if you think there's a bug over here, you mark it with a tag. And I think there is a bug here because, oops, because this and this. So once you audit everything and you mark everything over here in the code, uh you create a file. I call it report MD. The idea is you write down all the findings that you have found here in the code base. For example, like that. Let's say you have hi, and then you start, you know, hi number one, no re-entrancy protection, blah blah blah. You write it down relatively briefly. I mean, it's not a real competition. Don't spend the whole time like writing POCs and stuff like that. You can do that just to practice, but you shouldn't put too much effort into it, because the important thing is to really audit the code base and write out the stuff that you think are bugs. And the most important part after you're done with this, and this is the big advantage of shadow auditing, is that you can immediately go to the report and read the actual bugs, and you can compare to what you found and if your findings were valid, and you can read about all the things you missed. And that's the biggest perk. You get to see what you missed, why you missed it, and get better. This is how I leveled up really quickly. And after I was done with that audit, I did a second one. And the good thing is that once you're done with this one, you learned all your mistakes. And immediately after that, you can practice on those mistakes, and make sure you learned from your mistakes. And second audit is really important because it solidifies everything you learned, and also makes you uncover even more bugs that you have missed. So I did two of those, and it was completely enough to get me going. And believe me, I was very confident after that I can find bugs. I just knew that it's a matter of time from now on. And one last thing, I wanted to show you how I would pick up a report from one of the current ones, so you don't have to like pick something I showed you that happened 2 years ago. So I'm opening the Code Arena, reports section, and here are all the published reports of past competitions. So you're interested in two things. It should be a simple protocol, and it should have a lot of bugs. So let's open one, for example, see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna scroll to the scope, area where they write down how many line. Oh, sorry about that. That's the. It's okay. Um, Second. Okay, thing is this one. Okay, that's the competition. Let's see how big it is. Okay, that's 386 lines of code. It's perfect. It's not big. And what's left is to see if it has enough bugs. So only 2 medium findings and 1 high. So there aren't too many bugs in that one. You need to make sure it's filled with bugs so you can really practice. I think this one is proper. Let's see. Okay, you have 20 medium findings and 3 high findings. That's plenty of playground, to exercise. So the only thing I would check if this is, simple enough to get it going. And okay, that's almost 800 lines of code. It's about the limit of how big it should be, so it's okay. So if I was to start right now, I would probably pick this contest and, do a shadow audit and learn from it. Do that twice with 2 protocols and you're good to go. From then on, you just start auditing and auditing and auditing. And this is how we get to the second point, which is how you advance, after you're past the beginner stage, and what is the proper way to analyze the reports. Once you start competing on a regular basis, it's very important to study the reports from past competitions, because this is how you get to sort of update your auditor mindset, steal some from the creativity of other auditors. That's the good thing about Web3. Everything is public. So if you get into competitions with some of the best auditors out there, in the end, you get to see how you performed against them, and you get to compare your mindset, your approach to theirs, and see what you should do to get close to their performance. Um, so I'm gonna do an example of 2 occasions where I really considerably upskilled my auditing skills mainly because I spend the necessary amount of time and effort into analyzing reports. I'm gonna show you what this taught me about auditing and the different auditing approaches, and I'm gonna share a concrete example from a relatively recent private audit I did, and how the skill of analyzing audits helped me to evade a situation in that audit. Oh, yes, yes. Yes. Well, it's normal to be, to feel a bit frustrated in the beginning. I still do in most of the time because you don't know the code base and it takes some time to get to know, you know, how it works. So that's normal. Normally, I spent about half the time reading the code, and I submit my bugs and validate them in the last 40% of the competition. That's normal. Regarding the question, how do you get quicker? It's by practicing. I haven't found any like shortcut. You just have to audit constantly, and with time, your brain just starts automating things. Like your focus should be to practice and go through as much protocols as you can. Uh, and with time, the effect just compound, and you would gradually become more and more and more efficient because a lot of the concepts would start to like duplicate in your competitions, and a lot of the things you won't have to like dig info for them in on the internet because you would already have background on it. So yeah, just practice. I know it's a cliche, but that's what worked for me and what worked for most of the other auditors that I know. Uh, what do you mean a lot of, can you ask the question again? Did I get a lot of finance? Uh, oh, well, you don't get, you don't get any financials when you do shadow auditing. That's the downside of it because, you're missing on actual competitions and you're spending all that effort on, practicing on stuff that won't bring you money because, those competitions are not active anymore. But you're doing this for a limited amount of time. Me, I spent about a month and a half. But as I said already, this like laid the foundation for really good performance after that. In my first competition, immediately after those shadow audits, I made like $300. Uh, and then after that, I was consistently doing three figures in my first 2 months. And for comparison, before doing any shadow audits, I did like $8 on my first contest, the one that got me really frustrated. So yeah, that's something you should be aware of. You're doing shadow audits because you're sacrificing your actual time in competing in the beginning just to gain enough confidence, because otherwise the chance of you quitting and midway and not achieving anything in any of those competitions is really high. If you're not, you could either be, of the 1%. Those are the guys that probably don't have any technical background or prior experience, but their brain is so there is made for auditing. It's so adapt. They're so fast to grasp knowledge, apply it, and they can just immediately start competing. I know such people, but they're the 1%. If you're not part of those 1%, I really would recommend to prepare like at least a month or two before diving into competitions. And after that, it should be only competitions, like compete until results start to show up. Yeah. And maybe now I show you those two, examples of reports. How uh those would be issues from competitions I missed. And when I read the report, I learned about them, and they really taught me new things. The first one, again, is from a competition I did, a while ago. But what's important here is the conveying the idea. So this one was from it was on Code Arena. It was the Wildcat protocol. Basically, it's a lending and borrowing, protocol. And this was one of the submissions that really, really opened my eyes about how I should audit code bases. That was early in the beginning when I was building my auditing mindset and my habits. And this was very important moment. This one was, I think, uh, unique or almost a unique issue with one or two duplicates. It was submitted by Milo Truck, which is one of the greatest auditors. Let me just introduce you to the protocol really briefly. So we have the protocol is allows creating different markets, lending markets, where each market can be configured individually, different fees, liquidation rates, what type of currencies get lended, and borrowed, and so on and so forth. So each new market is a separate contract. And we have a factory that deploys those contracts. And this piece of code right here is the essential one. So the contract uses create2. I don't know if you're familiar with it. To summarize, this is a way of, deploying contracts in a deterministic manner. Well, it takes three components: the deployer code, which here is the factory, a random value called salt, and the code of the contract that is deployed. If you every time you deploy, you provide the same arguments, you get the same address. And the thing is, once there is something deployed at an address, with create2, you cannot deploy anything else in its place anymore. And as you can see here, this is what happens. So we calculate what would be, the address of the contract we're about to deploy. And then before actually deploying it with create2, we're checking if there is a contract already deployed to that address. And here is the tricky part: it uses code hash. When I was reading through the code, when I was auditing that code base, I just assumed, this sounds logical. Code hash, it checks that there is any code at the address, and if there's code, it would hash it and it would return a value that's not zero. So if there is no code, it would be zero. So that was my assumption. And if we take a look at the submission, you will see that this is the wrong way to approach code, like assuming something works and not checking how it actually behaves. And this is what this issue explains. You will see over here that this piece of code is actually insufficient to determine if the address code exists. And what's important here to see is how the auditor actually uncovered that this line over here cannot guarantee that an address actually isn't deployed. So the actual problem is that this over here can return true, even can return zero, even if there isn't deployed code, and it would prevent the factory from deploying a contract when it shouldn't. So basically, your contract is not deployed, and you can deploy it because the check is not sufficient. So what the auditor had done, he went to read, the the AP standard. That's that's an opcode. So what he basically did, he went in Google and he wrote, code hash Solidity, probably something like that. 1 second. And he found out that this is type of opcode, and then he eventually got on to the AP. He went through the whole description over here, and as you can see, this here explains what code hash actually does. So it said this is the vital thing. In case the account does not exist or is empty, 0 is pushed to the stack. So if we read it like that, in the case the account does not exist, this means there is no code deployed at that address, and this check over here is proper. That was my assumption. But also we have the second case, in case the account does not have code and is not empty, it returns this hash. So basically it says that, if it's not empty, it won't return 0. So, the last thing here is that he also took the time to explore what empty account means, which means reading about yet another proposal. And here is the thing that changes everything. So it says an account is considered empty if it has no code. This is the thing that we're assuming. But if also it has 0 balance, and this is the exploit, what we can do is we can send one like just amount of Ethereum to an account address before there's anything deployed at it. And if we do that, the account wouldn't return 0, but it would return this over here. And as you can see, the check here would fail. So I would send to this address over here 1 VEI, a just amount of Ethereum, and then cold hash won't equal to 0, but it would equal to the hash value, and we would prevent the contract to be deployed when it should be. And what's the important takeaway of all of this is that my mistake here, that I just assumed this should work like this, and I didn't spend the time to read what this is and how it works, and I didn't go into enough detail. And this is a very important. This taught me that I should not focus only on the code of the protocol I'm auditing, but I should spend the effort to go outside of it and research all external dependencies and understand how they work and treat them as if they were part of the code of the protocol itself. That's really important. And I'm gonna give you now a concrete example how this really helped me. So very recently, I had done a private audit with a protocol that was doing helping launching projects to auction their tokens. So let's say I create a project called BOGO and I have a BOGO token. I can deposit my tokens in that protocol, and it would allow me to distribute in different manners through an auction, to private sale, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna focus on the auctioning part. So the team had developed the code really well, and for the actual it was handling depositing the tokens and all the business logic around it, but the actual auctioning logic was offloaded to a third-party protocol, which was a relatively big one. It was like 5 or 6K lines of code, which is a lot. And if I was to look only at the code I was auditing, things looked fine. I mean, there were 1 or 2 vulnerabilities and a few mediums, but overall it was well written. But then, thanks to all the good habits I have built in the past, like the one I showed you from that report, I knew that I had to like explore everything. So I went on and I started reading, the docs of that protocol, and I immediately came to the realization that the assumptions on which the protocol was built were false, and I uncovered like 3 or 4 criticals that would not be possible if I was only focused on the protocol. And yet more, I did not trust the docs entirely. This is another important thing I learned, that you should, in order to fully understand how a protocol works, you should read the source code. So I went in. I said it's a big protocol. It was like 5,000 lines of code, but I didn't go through everything. I focused on the flows that were interacting directly with the protocol I was auditing. And after spending almost a day on it, I uncovered like 2 or 3 criticals. They're really serious issues. And this wouldn't be possible if I didn't go all the way into the rabbit hole and like study the docs and study the source code. So, and this approach like allowed me to deliver really high quality service to that client, allowed me to help them secure their protocol. And since, the changes were very solid, it was required to do a complete architectural changes. The difference from my standard, issue mitigation is that it's instead of, writing 5 or 6 lines of code just to fix the issue, you have to change the whole flows in the contract, like completely remove functions, add new ones, which changes, fully how the contract works, which required an additional audit after that. But my point here is all of those habits that I have built through analyzing reports and draining valuable info from them, now those things are automated in my brain, and I know I have to do them. And thanks to those things, in this particular case, it saved my ass from like missing a bunch of critical issues that could have been missed in that audit. So it's very important to like work on your habits and your in your skills. And yeah, I think that's with the report analysis. So just to summarize once again, well, once you have to spend the time and go through the report, and on each finding ask the question, why did I miss this issue? What should I have done not to miss it? And try to build the mental model just I have shown you now, with this issue in your brain. And this is how you actually upgrade your mentality and try to copy the approach of, other auditors that found this. And with time, it gets automated and you start to, do those things which lead you to find those bugs. So it's not just reading through the report and closing it, but really going through each issue and asking those questions and finding the answers. And this is how you upgrade and become a better auditor. And I'm doing this to this every day, to this very date. It's how you progress. And I think that's about the part with insights and practical examples and uh, uh, valuable insights that I can share from my experience up until now. Maybe should I touch upon the art of auditing, or maybe we answer some questions? Okay, I'm gonna talk a bit about that and why it came to be in the first place. So I was bombarded, like not only me, but a lot of other auditors as well, with questions from people that want to get into this industry. How do you start? How do you not lose, confidence? Is it normal that I feel frustrated at the start of an audit? Or even some more advanced auditors, is it normal that, or for example, auditors that are used to do competitions and they switch to bug hunting, they're not really sure, is it normal that they don't find bugs, for a long period of time, how they should handle bug bounties and all sort of questions. And there's so many all those auditors that are specialized in different disciplines like bug hunting and competitions and private engagements, and each has his own area of expertise. And I thought, this is something that would be very valuable, and something we don't currently have, an unified place where all of that uh, valuable and powerful knowledge, can be gathered in one place. And the idea was that anyone should be able to learn something from that resource. It's not targeted only to newbies or to advanced, auditors. It's just compiling the experience of probably tens of thousands hours of audits in one place. And the other idea was to create a resource that provides what I call evergreen knowledge. This is something that would be valid in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4, in 5 years. I mean, bugs will change. The specifics around them will change because, chains and smart contract languages evolve, but the principles you apply are what will stay. And this is what the resource is focused on. And this is also why it's called the Art of Auditing. It's a reference to The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I don't know if you know it, if you read it, but it's been written, I think, about 2,000 years ago, and it's just as relevant today as it used to be like 2,000 years ago. So this is what this name of the resource, symbolizes. I'm uh um I'm calling this a resource, not a book, because I don't think it has a concrete author. It's just the efforts of all those amazing auditors that managed to contribute to this thing and make it like available to everyone. It was a great challenge to collect all that knowledge, getting to uh, uh, having to contact, like I contacted, I think, about 80 auditors, and I had only one conditions. I reached out only to people that had proven track record of performing. Like I just scraped all of the leaderboards of Immunify, Code Arena, Sherlock, Codehawks, Cantina, and I just reached out to all of those guys. And but the surprising thing was that all of them were so ready to contribute. They were, they liked the idea and they spent the time. I mean, all of those people, their time is very precious, because they can spend it on auditing, on doing private engagements. But like 80% of the people I reached out to, they just rolled back with their insights and alpha. So I'm really grateful and want to say that all this is possible thanks to their contributions and efforts. Um, I've gathered like 3 examples from the book that really caught my attention, but this is a very small sample from the tens of or hundreds of really helpful, really valuable alphas that you can find in there. One was about book hunting. I don't know if you probably heard about Lonely Slot. I think he's currently the best bounty hunter out there. He has made lots and lots of cash from bug hunting. And he shares, for example, in this alpha, and this is, you can tell that is from his experience, that even he, one of the best out there, has periods in his career where where he doesn't find anything, even though he has lots and lots and lots of experience. There are times when even the best people don't find books, but what separates them from the rest is that they don't give up, they're consistent, and they continue to grind until they find something. So I think that's very inspirational, and that he shares that alpha, because that's behind the stage. It's very easy to look at Twitter at people posting how they landed the $150,000 bounty, or even $1 million bounty, but they don't know what effort went into that, what sacrifices. And that's also one of the goals of this resource, to show the background, how things really happen, stripped from marketing. Another really great insight is from Jax, a really amazing auditor. He's especially good with Rust. And I really agree on that one, is that, when there are a lot of competitions, uh, it's really good to have a strategy when you pick which contest to participate in, because this can really influence the odds of making, performing good, making good money, and also ranking well. So he shares that, it's good to research if a protocol was audited prior, and how many audits it got, and from what type of audit companies it was audited. What's the code quality. If it doesn't have a proper test coverage, most probably the devs did are not very, dedicated to security, and are not very thorough in their approach of testing out the code base. So it's very likely that there are lots of issues. And also the size, since the number of participants is constantly rising and the competition gets bigger, it's really good to focus on bigger contests, because there's a bigger chance to, uncover um, more unique bugs that would pay out better and rank you better. And yeah, bigger code bases provide that, because they are harder. A lot of people would won't take the challenge, so this reduces the competition. um and one another very insightful and valuable alpha is from another really, really great bug hunter. This one is about the strategy you should have when doing bug hunting. It's that it's possible that you find, a low severity bug in a code base, but you should not, like, be inclined to immediately submit it as a low issue, because you might prevent the opportunity from, turning it into a high vulnerability one. What he does is he spends additional time to build context around that low issue, and see if he can connect it to other parts of the system and turn it into high vulnerability. Because if he submits it as a low, it would get fixed and he would lose, the right to submit it as a high vulnerability issue. And all of this that you see here, those are the personal, alphas of those great auditors. And you can tell it's entirely based on their own experience. And I think that's really valuable. And oh yeah, it's completely. I'm gonna share some links at the end of this presentation. I'm gonna like sync with you. I'm gonna upload them somewhere. But regarding the resource, I made, a very simple page in Twitter. It's called the Art of Auditing. It also has a website. I'm gonna show you how it looks. It's a Git book. It's in that format because, after some research, I came to the conclusion it's the best way to organize this, and it's really easy to maintain it. And yeah, it looks like this. It has a short preface. Um, and over here on the left, you can pick any, all the contributors. All of them, up to the last one, are really great auditors. You just pick one of them, and you have each one has his own section. And to give more credibility to those auditors, they also share their achievements, so it makes those alphas even more powerful. And yeah, each one shares his insights in such a format. The idea was to be focused and, provide value, not to write. much. Yeah, yeah. And now I'm thinking of, when I have the time to write some off-chain like bot that would like every day would post one of those, alphas on the page and sort of like keep people inspired, like having an insight of the day. But I gotta find the time for it. I think it's an easy one, but still need time to test it and make it work. We're ready with my presentation. I am ready to answer questions or whatever you have to. Uh, well, once I started performing really well, I thought this was after the blast contest, where the results came out in May, and the competition was in March. So around May, when I saw the results, and when I had the previous results, from the competitions that I have won, I was feeling very confident that this I have the verifiable proof that I'm good enough for it, and I can. And I didn't want it to join as a junior. That was another thing. I wanted to I want to build the skill and like join as a regular auditor. And yeah, the results are what give you the confidence to do. So if you remember, confidence was the thing I needed in the first place to start competing and not give up. I achieved this with shadow auditing. And then when I started competing, the actual results from the leaderboards is what gave me the confidence to decide that I can switch to private audits. So yeah, results are nothing better than that. If I didn't have a job, so when so I had a job and I put like between 4 and 6 hours, but if I didn't have one, I would probably put between not too much more than that because there's a limit to it, but probably between maybe about 8 hours a day. But I would split it. For example, I would get up in the morning and invest like 4 hours. I will take a break for 2 hours and I would do 2 to 3 more hours. Then again, I'm gonna take a break for 2 or 3 hours and do the final 1 or 2 hours, something like that. But I didn't have that luxury at the time, so the most important thing is yeah, yeah, 8 hours is sufficient. But the more important part is to be consistent. I mean, if you it does mean that you can't allow yourself to invest 4 hours a day. You will fail. It's just gonna get like slower. But the important thing is to be every single day until you get good enough. Like it could be only 2 hours a day, but it should be every day, like Monday, Tuesday, all through Sunday, and then the next week, and the next week, and the next week. Consistency is key, and consistency is what makes all the difference. It's very important in all aspects of life. So auditing makes no exception. Well, most of the time, when there are complex functions, they probably invoke some type of other internal functions. So I just break it down. You know, uh, I start reading those internal functions and I analyze them individually so I understand what they're meant to do. And I go back to the main complex function and start read it from the start up until that internal function is called and try to understand the flow from the start until that function. Then I continue down And when I encounter another internal function, I just hop onto it, learn how I isolate it, learn how it's structured. Then I come back to the main flow in the complex function, rinse and repeat until I get to the end. And I take a break and I then come back and go through the whole function once again. And probably yeah, that's the approach. And one more thing to mention, a lot of times functions are complex not because of the logic inside them, but most probably because you don't have the full context of the code base you're auditing. So a really good approach is when you have a code base, what I like to do in the first or 2 days, I just go through, and this is a very good recommendation that was offered by Peakbolt, another really great auditor. Just go through the code base on a more surface level without going too deep, and go through the functions to see what are the main actors, what are the main flows, are there deposits, is there staking, is there liquidation, and all of that. So you can draw a good picture in your head how the whole thing is supposed to work. And then when you start to read those more complex functions and you have better context, it's most of the time it's much more easier to understand what is happening and what each function is supposed to do. So I would do this first. I would gain an initial context, and then if still the function proves to be complex to understand, I go line by line and try to put it together. Well, initially when I was starting out, it was a really low percent. That's the thing when you audit constantly, is your capacity gets bigger and bigger and bigger. For example, now I audit like at least 3 times faster than in the beginning. So right now, if I have to audit something, let's say we have a protocol with 1,500 lines of code. Let's say we have to audit it in the matter of week, 7 days. So I'm gonna need about 5 days to go through the whole code thoroughly and like everything. Uh, okay, let's say 90%. There would be about 10% that are boilerplate or something that I don't have to go in too much detail. But let's say 90%, I would cover it in 5 days, and I'm gonna spend the rest 2 days just to go through the most vital flows one more time. If we have to compare that when I was starting out, this size of a code base would probably take me 10 days, and I'm not even sure if I was able to go that deep as I can now. But that's thanks to a lot of concepts that are already in my head. They're automated. I don't have to look up for a lot of things. I know how they work. Which doesn't mean you shouldn't, you shouldn't assume anything in a protocol. You should always verify it, but there are some fundamental things that you can rely on. How do I once again, how do I pick out yeah, I this is very related to one of the alphas I shared here from Jax. And this is very geniusly written. I think this answers the question very precisely. So initially, when I was starting out, I had no criteria, so I just jumped in on whatever was available. Then the number of competitions started to pile up. Like at one point, we hit I think like 30 competitions, which was unheard of. It was really it was exciting, but then at the same time it was slippery because a lot of people made the mistake of going simultaneously or speed running one contest after the other without going into much depth. And oftentimes Not always, but oftentimes the results are very mediocre. So
So,
for me personally, it always worked best to focus on one competition and go all in. And this is the moment when building that skill of picking the right contest was very important. So I focused on size. I was looking for contests that are at least 2,000 lines of code because, they're bigger, there's more attack surface, and the competition is a little bit more dispersed. And with time, as my capacity grows stronger, I started picking bigger and bigger contests. Now, I would probably pick a contest that is at least 300 or 400 lines of code because, competitions get stiffer and my capacity is much bigger and I can handle such code bases without any frustration. I'm used to, finding my way around them really fast. So I would look for size. It I started learning also Rust in the last few months, so I can audit more exotic code bases. So this also a good approach, but again, it requires time until you grasp the specifics of the ecosystem. For example, Cairo or Solana. Right now, I'm investing heavily in Move and Cairo because I had engagements in those languages and I had to learn those stuff. But those things give you an edge because fewer people, are competent in those fields. Most of the auditors have learned Solidity, and this is where most of the competition is. So if it's a big code base, or if it's a more exotic language, those are good signs, And if the code base didn't have any prior audits, uh, it could be a double-edged sword. If you didn't have any prior audits, a lot of times it means that the protocol founders have, you know, uh, have not spent the necessary amount of preparation before the competition, meaning there could be a lot of bugs in the code base, and you would spend a lot of time submitting like very simple bugs because they're there. They have not been cleared before the competitions through a private engagement, and you have to write down all of those issues that most of the other auditors would also find. So it's a bit of wasting time. But the other side of the spectrum is also an opportunity to, you have to filter out through all of those bugs and find something more unique. But I would say if they had one prior audit, that's good because it's not enough to make a protocol secure enough. But it still means there are probably more than enough bugs, like deeper bugs, not the superficial ones that everyone would find. But yeah, one prior audit, a big code base, more than 2,000 lines of code would be a perfect candidate for to be picked. But right now, if we have to be, honest, the competitions are not that much. I haven't checked like in the last 4 or 5 days, but we have like 5 or 6 or 7 competitions. I'm not sure. So the picking part might not be the most appropriate one.
awesome. Next question from our friend Hello Auditor. I'm auditing full time from January, but still no luck. What am I doing wrong? I find so hard to understand the code base. How do I grasp the context of the code base?
Yes, this is the exact same problem I had when I was starting out, and you should strive for simplicity. I'm referring back to the shadow auditing so much, but it works so well. I mean, I'm it's because I practice it and I really like it. Uh, just pick one code base that should be simple, as I have showcased earlier, and try to understand it. I mean, the that's all there is to it. It should be simple. That's an important thing because if you pick something complex and you don't have, the necessary experience, it won't do you a favor. So even you can pick even something very simple like 100 to 200 lines of code and just go through it and don't stop until you make sure you understand it. This means that you if you don't understand it, it's more probably that you don't know some concepts that it uses. So you just start to research, and with AI, that's so easy now. You just go. I would go to GPT or any other AI agent, and I would just start asking questions. I mean, I'm doing this right now for a lot of protocols that implement, some more strange concepts. I start to make conversations with AI and ask him stuff, and provoking him, saying this is not right. I do not agree with this one, and see what it would tell me. And it's an interesting way to grasp stuff. And once you start to do this, you would gradually become better at understanding the code. So pick a simple contest and try to understand it, and try to find some bugs in it. Like, don't stop. Just read and read and read, and see what you can't understand, and read about it on the internet, and then come back to the protocol and try to see if you can understand it now. Rinse and repeat, and eventually it will happen.
Awesome. I have a little bit of a complicated question here from our friend 0xCG. And
Yep.
Quick stating that would you recommend just to participate in contests in various competitions and submitting findings and not caring much if the findings would impact our overall standing in terms of signal ranking, points, and etc. As most platforms decrease your standing if not all bugs are in the contest are submitted, or if some are invalidated, hence your ranking bleeds. So I think he's saying that could should just put force all the competitions and send whatever and not care about how you rank between valid and invalid findings?
Yes, I understand the question. It has been, a topic of debate a lot of times. Um, well, there's both approaches. Uh, there's some really good auditors that I know, that lend very interesting, unique submissions, unique findings that, uh, uh, that lend them very good, cash and leaderboard ranking. And I know a lot of those guys submit a lot of invalid issues. It requires some effort, to hit the right spot. So that's one approach. Mine is, I think that's up to your personality. I'm very critical, and I've always found it hard to submit absolutely everything I have in my head, even the things, if I'm not sure in a finding, I don't submit it. And most probably, uh, there were occasions where this was not the right approach. Probably there are cases where I did not submit a bug. There is one confirmed such case from a competition where I didn't submit the bug because I thought, the issue was not very convincing, and it would probably either be graded as low or QA. But then it ended up to be a high because, there was another guy who submitted this book but had a very good argument, and I would, if I submitted that book, I would have been part of two people that uncovered it. So it's depends on the situation, but I think it's not a bad approach to submit everything that you find. Just make sure to not submit like completely useless issues that you just submit for the sake of submitting, without verifying first that has at least some sort of sanity in them. I mean, the judges have a really challenging task, and submit this is the very reason why those signals and reputation scores were introduced. They did not existed like 1 year ago, but with so much competition, and so a lot of recently a lot of AI findings that are, I'm guessing there are people that just copy paste the code into GPT and say find the bugs in that code, and they probably paste the results in the submission form. That's a no. You should only submit stuff that you found yourself, and you have at least a minimum amount of, confidence that it's possible that they might be an issue.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, brother. And last question here from our friend Halal Auditor is, when approaching an audit, do you first understand the docs at high level and then audit the code, or you first understand the code and then the docs?
I tried both approaches, and again, it doesn't really matter which one you do first. The only thing that matters is what works better for you. For me, I always start with the code. Uh, uh, it's just how I'm used to starting an audit. And I start with the code. I do, a more high-level overview to see what are the main flows. And then I would check the docs, but I would not read like thoroughly everything from the docs. I would just go through the main sections and find those flows and see some basic descriptions of what how those things are supposed to do, are supposed to work. And then when I dive into the audit, if I stumble upon some variables or interactions that do not make a lot of sense for me, I would refer from time to time to the docs when I need it. I mean, I'm not gonna spend all that time learning the docs in advance because I'm not sure I'm gonna need all of that knowledge. So I find it better to focus on the audit, on the code, and to reference docs when there is something that I don't understand or I need more context on.
Awesome, brother. I mean, there's nothing else to say. This was an amazing presentation. A lot of really, really good, really, really useful information. I want to thank you so much, for putting the time, preparing, booking the date, taking a little bit of your time to show us the way. Just amazing. Everybody here is really thankful. Beautiful presentation. Would you like to say any last words for people that will listen to this in the future on YouTube?
Well, um, yes, final words are that don't get put down, like especially if you're starting out. It's supposed to be hard because if it wasn't, everyone would have been doing this and there would be no opportunities in it. I believe we're still early in this industry. And if you're asking your question, is it too late? Then you're not in the proper industry. You just have to start and be consistent, be persistent, and have a bit of patience. Give it a bit of time, and results will start to follow. Just don't give up and follow your goal. And I think there's plenty of opportunities still, even though right now markets are a bit lower, and the activity from 1 year ago is reduced. But I'm a firm believer that that's in the next few months things will get better and we will be again on will be high tides, like things will get back to what they used to be, and will, long term they will only get better and better and better, like more competitions, more people would get into the space, more protocols to audit, new types of books and all of that. So it would be a very interesting journey worth telling stories about. And I would really recommend to dive into Web3 security or Web3 as a whole of these opportunities.
I mean, amazing stuff. Everybody's really thankful here. Bogo, thank you so much. I really want to bring you near the future again because this was a really interesting, really interactive section. I can see a lot of the people here are really had a lot of questions. They can really relate. And I think your talk comes down to consistency, reliance, just put in the work, but not being like some people are saying, hey, work 20 hours a day or whatever, but you're being really to the ground, 8 hours a day, be consistent, try to learn from the best, and use the art of auditing, everybody. Just go over Bogo's Twitter account. I'm gonna be linking these in the talk here, and go learn from the best. Bogle, once again, thank you so much. I want to say bye to everybody and see you guys soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day or the night, whatever your time zone is.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Have a good one.